Hi, welcome to Picky Eating and Expanding Variety, a discussion that we are going to have today. I am Rachel Rothman with Nutrition in Bloom, and I'm excited to be chatting with you. So today we are going to be talking all about how to expand variety with a picky eater at home. Please say hello if you are here, if you are joining live, if you are catching the replay, say hello. I've had some challenges where sometimes I don't see them until after the fact. So if I miss it or if you ask a question, I will absolutely be sure to answer your question either here if I can see it or later on today. Thank you. I know that so many of you are struggling with picky eaters and how do we expand variety. Candace says hi. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, comments are coming in. Awesome. You're struggling with picky eaters, right? You want to expand what they're eating, but it becomes really challenging. So I want to talk about that today. And I also want to mention I have a free 4-day challenge coming up. It's called 4 Days to Happier Mealtimes. And it is all about how to make mealtimes positive and happy, how to get your kids trying new foods, how to get really just everybody on a really great path when it comes to eating. I would love to have you take part. It is completely free. I have linked the where you can sign up here, and basically how it's going to work is it takes place April 19th through the 22nd, and each day you will get an email with one specific tip or strategy related to feeding, how to make meal times more peaceful and happier for everyone. I will also be going live right in my Facebook group each day to talk about any questions that come up, so it's really a great chance to get some live coaching or to get your questions answered. We'll definitely be talking about some of the stuff I talk about today, but really go deep into some of these topics. And it's called a challenge, but it's anything but challenging. It's really meant to be something that you could do, take 5, 10, 15 minutes a day to work through some of this stuff. And at the end of the week, I send you a recap. So even if you can't keep up every day, you will get a recap at the end of the week. And it's free. So you've honestly got nothing to lose to sign up. So I hope that I will see you there. Okay. So let's talk. Let's talk about picky eaters and how we can expand their variety. So I first just want to mention which I've talked about before, but if you're new here, you might not have heard me talk about something called the division of responsibility. There is a dietitian, she's also a family therapist, and her name is Ellen Satter, and she talks about the division of responsibility. She talks about how parents are responsible for the what, the when, and the where of feeding, and children are responsible for the how much and the whether of eating. So what that means is that we as parents or caregivers, we are providing the food, we are setting a time and a place for the food, and we're allowing our kids to decide how much they want to eat and if they want to eat that food. And the reason that we do it this way, and I will say this is based on research, there's been a ton of research on this, is because we want kids to develop a healthy relationship with food. And what I mean by that is we want them to have positive experiences when they come with food. We want to take away any pressuring, any bribing, or forcing them to eat a certain amount, because we want them to have that autonomy with what they're eating. Now, some of you may be, hearing this and thinking that sounds crazy, or, like my kid's not going to eat any vegetables unless I make them take 2 bites. But I promise you it is possible. And this division of responsibility framework is just something I want you to think about in the back of your mind. And, you don't have to be there yet, but I just want you to start thinking about it. And we'll talk about this in the challenge that I'm running. But it is something to think about. So with that, I like to preface with that idea because I think it's really important to think about. But with that, I want to think about how we can expand what our kids are eating. So, I I hear a lot, I just want my child to be eating vegetables. If they would just eat chicken, if they would just, take a bite of yogurt, I'd be so happy. Or certain foods. And sometimes we can kind of get pigeonholed into what variety we want them to have versus what variety makes a little bit more sense. So, what I actually want you to do when it comes to thinking about variety is to think about how you can offer variety based on the foods that they're already eating. If we think about this like goal setting, right? Like if we're going to set a goal, a life goal, or if we're going to do anything, if we want to make a change or change a habit in our life, let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to throw out an example. Let's say we want to start meditating, or let's say we want to start, being more mindful. Are we going to go from doing nothing to like meditating for an hour a day? Probably not, right? What we might want to do is go from doing nothing to meditating for like a minute a day, or to, taking 5 deep breaths a day. And that was just my example. It was the first thing that popped into my head. But when we think about variety and making changes, my point being, we want to make really small changes. So if your child, let's say, is eating veggie sticks, which, yeah, they're called veggie sticks, right? Because they have a little bit of vegetable in them. We're probably not going to be able to go from a veggie stick to a piece of cooked broccoli, right? But what we might be able to do is if they're eating a veggie stick, let's see, can we try like another type of veggie chip that they might be able to eat? And then if we offer the veggie chip, can we then maybe try another type of veggie chip, or like a baked vegetable that resembles more of a chip? And then from there, might we be able to offer, let's say, something that we make at home, whether that's something that we cook at home. So what I'm doing here is talking about how we can really just make these small changes, and these small changes are expanding variety. Okay, so if you want your child to be eating a vegetable, fine, have that as a goal, but have that as a long-term goal. Let's focus in the nearer term on how we can make something, or how we can offer something that's more similar to what they're eating right now, because it's going to be easier, especially for children who are more selective, right? It's going to be easier for them to go from that the veggie straws to like some other kind of veggie chip, versus going all the way to the broccoli. And we'll get there, right? Like it's, you can see my hands, we're kind of like moving forward. We'll get there eventually, but we have to take it slow. We want to offer that variety in a slow way. Other examples of this might be offering a different shaped noodle. So if your child eats penne noodles, can you offer maybe the same brand but spiral noodles or spaghetti noodles? Every child is really different in terms of what they tolerate, if they're selective or not. There's a spectrum. So we have to figure out where our child's at. But what I want you to think about, and you can even, if any of you have downloaded my 4 steps guide to help your child try new food, you can use, I have a fillable PDF or fillable worksheet in there where you could write out the foods your child likes, which will be easier when you write that out to see, okay, how can we expand? And I will say my the online course that I offer, Conquering Mealtimes, we do a lot of this. We do this work like specifically during our sessions together. So I want you to think about that variety piece and how you can make some of these small changes. That might even be like a chicken nugget, maybe frying it instead of baking it, or heating it up in a different way. So you're changing one aspect. Sometimes we look at changing like the texture, the flavor, the color, or the shape. And I know I feel like I'm going over a lot here, but I have more videos that kind of detail these specific things. I also want you to remember with this, when it comes to these new foods, is that it takes time for your kids to get more variety. and to start eating new foods. So research shows that it can take 20, even 30 exposures of a new food before a child is going to eat it. And I don't say that to feel daunting, right? I say that because I want you to know that this whole process takes time. And what I almost want to do is figure out, okay, what are our expectations and how can we make sure our expectations are in line with something that's realistic? Um, so that's kind of where I'm coming from with this variety. Candace says, my kids love pancakes and I found a recipe for beet pancakes just to try something different. I put my heart and soul into the pancakes and she didn't want anything to do with them. I hate wasting my time and getting her to try new things and she hates them. Okay, that is an awesome point. I'm so glad that you brought that up because, yeah, that can absolutely happen. Which is why when I recommend some of like making these changes or trying new foods, have it be something that you will eat or that other members of the family will eat or that you're giving them like a little bit. And I think that was a perfect example. I have shared, some of you have heard this story, but when my oldest was about 18 months, I made these roasted red pepper feta quinoa balls. I made quinoa, I roasted my own red pepper, I like made it into a ball, I baked these balls and I took them out. I was so excited to give them to her and she wanted like absolutely nothing to do with them. And it was such a frustrating experience because maybe if I would have given her the quinoa on its own, she would have eaten it, right? So when you think about this, think about like, and yes, I enjoyed the roasted red pepper quinoa balls, but I did spend a lot of time on them and it was a process for me. So to absolutely think small and to think like, how can we make small changes? So Candace, what I might suggest for you there is, okay, you have these pancakes. Can you maybe make like 3/4 of the batch without beets? And then add a little bit of beets at the end into the last two pancakes. And then it's going to be more about that exposure to the new food. So she might not eat them, she might look at them, she might touch them. And I actually have a really great video that I did a couple of weeks ago on exposure and interaction and why that's a lot of times more important than actually trying the food because that exposure and interaction is what leads to kids trying new food. So yes, so bottom line is we have to take, good, I'm glad that was a good idea. Bottom line is we have to take like our emotional piece out of it because when we want them to try a new food, when we're trying to get them to try something new, usually it doesn't work. Usually they like sense what's going on with us, right? They know what our agenda is. So that's why we've got to take some of that stuff out. And it's much easier said than done, right? Like I 100% get that. And that's why in the 4-day challenge that I'm doing, we're going to absolutely talk about that and how we can shift what's in us to make changes and make things more positive for everyone and how that will in turn affect our kids. So, the other thing with trying new foods, I know we've kind of gone over a good amount of things. I just want to talk about like offering new flavors, new textures, again, but doing it in a way where it feels good for you. A lot of times when I coach parents or in my Conquering Mealtimes group, when I'm working with parents, we talk about, okay, well, what do you like? Like you as a parent, what do you want to try cooking? Like what would feel good for you to try? Because then it's not, and then we offer it to our kids, yes, but we don't have that expectation that our kids are going to eat it. So we want to, we don't want to get pigeonholed into only providing the food that they like. We want to offer them new flavors and new textures and new foods, but without the expectation that they're going to try those foods right off the bat. That exposure is going to be key. So, every Friday in my Facebook group, I talk about, okay, celebrate your feeding win. What's a feeding win? And I talk about how a feeding win is not just eating a new food, right? It might be touching, it might be tolerating the food on the plate. So, all of these things together is how we are going to make progress. Okay, that was a mouthful. Takeaways. I want you, if you're watching this video, share here or share with me privately, but I want to know what's one thing that you can do to add variety by offering it, and how can you try to do that with your little ones in your family. Okay, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to sign up for my challenge. Totally free. We're going to go over some of the stuff we talked about here and more to really get you on the path to feeding with joy and happiness, smiles instead of tears at mealtimes. It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait. And as always, I am always here if you have any questions or want to chat. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I am so grateful for this community. Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye-bye.